Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Custom Support webinar about AEO, and thank you all for joining. My name is Jelle Mulders, and I'm responsible for business development within Custom Support Consulting. This webinar is hosted by our consulting department, and I will guide you all through this AEO webinar. But first, let us have a look at our agenda for today. First of all, I will tell you a bit about Custom Support and our consulting department. Then I will introduce our speakers of today. They will tell you a bit more about AEO, the types of AEO, for example, the AEO Full, the AEO S, or the AEO C. But they will tell you also something about the AEO status, what the AEO status tells customers or prospects about your reputation. At the end, there will be a Q&A between Matthias and Marloes. They will discuss the points of concern for the AEO application. After the session, I will come back to you and tell you a bit about what Custom Support can do within the application for AEO. I hope that the most of you already know Custom Support. That's why I will tell a bit about us in a nutshell. Custom Support is your European leader in customs. We are working fully compliant, efficient, transparent, and digital. As you all know, the customs market is constantly changing and there are challenges everywhere. For example, Brexit, which we had 1.5 years ago, and unfortunately, the Ukraine situation, which we are facing right now. We are already represented in 11 European countries, and this number is growing every year. We want to be close to our clients in the logistic hotspots nearby airports and harbors. We also have trusted partners in all other European countries, so that's why we can also support you in these locations. Besides our custom clearance activities, Custom Support has a consulting department, which I will discuss later in this webinar. We also provide gas measurement and risk management in the Netherlands by our safety team. We are the front runner in digital customs and are constantly improving our services for our clients. Like I said, Custom Support wants to become the leading neutral and dynamic custom broker in Europe. What makes Custom Support special is that we are recognized as a market leading in digital solutions. We are working smart and sharing the knowledge of all our colleagues with our clients. In this way, our client can benefit from up-to-date knowledge. Our reputation as a highly professional organization makes us the go-to partner in Europe. I guess that the most of you know us already from our customs activities. We support our clients within import, export and transit documentation, but also on fiscal representation. Like I said, this webinar about AEO is hosted by our consulting department. We noticed in the market that there was an enormous need for information around this topic. That's why we decided to organize this webinar about this interesting topic. As you can see, our portfolio is much wider than just consulting on AEO. For example, on a strategic level, we can support companies with audits and assessment. We check if your processes are well described and if your compliance program still fits the necessary requirements. Also, optimizing your supply chain is something what all consultants can do best. The benefit is that it can save costs and let your organization work more efficient. On operational level, we notice that good customs people are hard to find these days. That's why we support in different kind of services like classification and interim resources. This can be an option for the long or for the short term. But let's go back to the main topic of today, AEO. I would like over the hand to our speakers of today, Matthias de Klerk and Marloes Willems.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matthias and I'm normally based in the Ghent office of Customs Support Belgium. I was working for a lot of years in the practical field of customs. I was making a lot of declarations myself and evolved to project management and focused on interfacing with customers. In that role, I always tried to act as a bridge between operations and IT. As Jelle stated already, Customs Support wants to be a leading player in the digitization of customs declarations. However, before you can automate stuff, you need to know exactly what you can do and what you cannot do. You need to have a thorough knowledge of customs legislation. So, since some time, I try to be a bridge between operations and compliance as well, as consultant this time. That's the role that brought me here today, to talk about AEO. But enough about me. I will hand over the microphone to my colleague. Marloes, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Matthias, and good afternoon to all listeners. My name is Marloes Willems. I am Delivery Manager at Customs Support International. My role is to take care of the smooth implementation for customers using our services in more than one country. My start at Customs Support was in 2018 as a consultant. After passing the Prince 2 Foundation and Practitioner courses, I became a project manager. Since September last year, I practiced this project management as delivery manager. My background in customs is with the customs authorities. I worked as a client manager at Schiphol Airport, where I reassessed AEO authorizations of companies in and around Schiphol. This means that I'm experienced in both sides of AEO, the side of the authorities and the one of the business. In my current role, I always try to bring these two together in the most efficient way. And today, during this webinar, I hope to share some relevant information with you about AEO. So let's start with what AEO actually is. AEO stands for Authorized Economic Operator, which has everything to do with international trade. Trade is probably as old as humanity exists. International trade dates all the way back to the 16th century. At that point of time, international trade was still exceptional. Only after World War II, international trade became more and more professional business. And today, as we have experienced after the outbreak of COVID-19, we can't even imagine the world without an international trade. To structure that international trade, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade was created, which was the start of what we currently call World Trade Organization. The international trade also led to Customs Cooperation Council, which is now known as the World Customs Organization. In 2001, after the attack at the World Trade Center in New York, the United States introduced the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. Europe's reply to that was the partnership with AEO. At this moment, AEO is a true flagship of the World Customs Organization. It's a partnership program between customs and business within Europe, recognized by all members of the World Customs Organization. It offers customs the opportunity to share responsibility on finance and security with the business, while at the same time, business gets rewarded with additional facilitation benefits. All businesses involved in international trade and established within the EU can become part of this partnership as they can become authorized economic operator. It's not only for importers and exporters, but also for producers, forwarders, customs warehouse keepers, carriers, and as representatives, also customs agents. Seeing the fact that all these businesses fulfill different roles in an international trade chain, there are also different types of AEO. First of all, to become an AEO, the business needs to get certified by customs authorities. An application needs to be submitted, and to do so, you have to choose which authorization the business requires. It's not like a certain type of business requires a certain type of authorization. The complete situation of a business determines the best option. There are 3 types of authorizations: AEOC, AEOS, and AEOF. AEOC stands for Custom Simplification and focuses on the administration of customs-related data and paperwork. By granting this authorization, Customs confirms that it's possible to follow the complete goods flow within the business's administration. This administration will provide insight at any moment of the day in duties that need to be paid and other measures that need to be taken. This means that Customs don't have to check each declaration separately, which unburdens the authorities and, on the other hand, have positive impact on the timeframes for the business. AEOS stands for Safety and Security. For this authorization, the focus lies with the physical circumstances of the goods. The most common business applying for these types of authorizations are goods owners and handlers, which outsource customs documentation and administration. The greatest advantage for most businesses in the worldwide mutual recognition is the worldwide mutual recognition with the United States, Japan, China, the UK, Norway, Switzerland, and Andorra. And over the years, this list keeps growing. The last type of authorization is a combination of the first 2 types, AEO Full. With AEO Full, both custom simplifications as well as safety and security are covered. As you may already expect, this is the most extensive and also the most impactful authorization to obtain. What the best authorization would be for the business can only be determined by the business's goals, strategies, wishes, resources, and many more aspects. Balancing these aspects against the benefits of the different authorization, that's something our experienced consultants can help you with. Matthias will now explain a bit more about the benefits of the AEO status can bring to your business.
Once again, hello to all listeners. Yes, I am going to talk about some benefits of the AEO certification. There might be some overlap with what's been said earlier. First of all, the certification is a kind of a quality label. You could compare it with an ISO standard, for instance. It doesn't deal, however, with quality of a product or a service, but its goal is to set a standard in dealing with custom matters and customs authorities. As Marloes already said, the basis of the program is not European. The standard is set by the World Customs Organization, which is an intergovernmental institution. However, since the EU laws are applicable in the EU customs territory, the program is, of course, adjusted a little bit. So it should meet the needs of the European Union. As such, an authorized economic operator in the European Union is also valid in a full EU customs territory. An AEO can be asked to be preferred partner of companies. And this is also gaining more and more importance. Some companies will simply require their logistical service providers to be AEO certified. The basic principle is a customs to business partnership, and that's based on 4 key elements: mutual cooperation, transparency, trust, and support. The ultimate goal or wish is to create a kind of a green lane in which all involved parties in the logistical process are AEO certified. To achieve this, the authorities are working towards a maximum facilitation of regular trade flows. That's also something that Marloes already told. And by doing so, they can focus on the illegal trade flows. Of course, to get companies on board, you need to give them some incentives. customs authorities are willing to grant simplifications, different kinds of simplifications, to the AEO. They will also allow AEOs to set lower guarantees, for instance, and they might simply diminish the amount of customs control, or perhaps postpone those controls to a later moment. So that could result in more documentary controls and less physical controls. Please note that these advantages are not fixed. They can always change, and the authorities can grant more benefits in the future.
So Matthias, when I hear all the benefits of an AEO license, it sounds like every company would like to achieve this status. But what exactly does a company has to do to become AEO certified? And what does the process look like?
Well, it's not that easy. It can be quite time consuming, I have to say. The first thing you need to do is to realize all the potential benefits for your company. So is it interesting for your company or not? And of course, you need to meet the basic requirements. Some of those basic requirements, one example is that you have to be, you need to have a legal entity inside the European Union, or at least in the customs territory. So once you've decided that it is wishful, you want to have it, then of course you need to decide which type of AEO license you would like to obtain. And then you will have to fill in a self-assessment questionnaire, gather some information, some documents, and present all that to customs, and they will assess your application.
Okay, so that sounds like a really intensive process. Are there any certain steps that customs consent to?
Well, it's clear that the self-assessment questionnaire is the most important one. That's for sure. So basically, that is a full questionnaire, so a lot of questions. And by providing all those answers to those questions, you will give a clear insight in your company and your organization towards the customs authorities. Of course, these questions are not just random. They are based on the Union Customs Code. And as such, it's all validated against some legal requirements.
Okay, and what kind of topics do I have to think about that the questionnaire covers?
Well, basically there are 6 topics. The first one is about general company information. Then you have compliance and customs legislation. So how do you deal with customs legislation? Then accounting and logistics, it's called. Then you have an important part about financial solvency. And the last 2 are professional competence. So to see if the people involved know what they're talking about. And then the last one is security measurements. Requirements.
Okay. So actually, it's a large extent is not only about customs topics, but also about the rest of the company, if I understand correctly. What do they want to know about the rest of the company?
Well, it goes about basic things like what activities do you do? What is the size of your company? The composition of your company? They want to know some financial data, but also, for instance, they want to know if the managers don't have a criminal record, for instance. And then there's like also a topic about your IT systems, your accounting systems, administrative systems, that as well.
Oh, but you mentioned financial data, but why would financial data be important for customs?
Well, as I stated before, one of the big benefits is the fact that you can have a moderation of your guarantees towards customs. So yeah, they will not grant it to a company that is not solvent enough, that cannot pay its debts, because at any time all taxes should be payable of course.
Okay, and what does that mean in the application process for the applicant of the license?
Well, the applicant will have to show financial data of the last 3 years, so that's quite a lot. And of course, it can happen that a new company or a new entity and another member state is asking for an AEO certification. So they don't have this data. So in this case, they will have to present some forecasting for the upcoming months or years.
Okay, so that makes it not impossible for a new company to become an AEO.
No.
And besides finance, you also mentioned accounting and IT. What do they want to know about IT and why?
Well, let's first focus on the accounting part. Accounting is maybe a bit misleading, that word. It's more about administration. So they want to see if you have good systems in place, because a good system creates traceability. And if all your transactions, both financially as well as logistically, if all those transactions are traceable, then there are other control options for the authorities. Then they can go to, okay, we will not control every shipment by shipment, but we will do some documentary controls later.
Okay, but what does that mean for companies that don't have a really extensive bookkeeping or a very expensive ERP system? Do they need to make big investments to become AEO authorized?
Not necessarily. That might vary. It depends on a number of factors. For instance, what type of goods. Do you trade in dual goods, for instance, or military equipment? That will change the result. But of course, also the size of the company. Do you have 1,000 shipments a month or only 10? That will all vary and depend the outcome. But in some cases, a good Excel sheet can suffice, for instance. So it's not necessarily true that you will have to make big investments there.
Okay, so that's good to know. And for IT, are there any specific requirements?
Specific requirements, no, not really. However, one of the questions or some questions handle, for instance, incidents. Were there incidents in your IT system in the past, for instance? So it's about security of your IT systems in that sense then.
Okay, and what do you mean exactly with IT incident? What if an IT incident happened in the past already?
Well, let's give an example. Let's say that there was a breach. Somebody hacked your system, or somebody that can be within your company as well, got access to files that he or she shouldn't have access to. Then they want to see how you dealt with this, because it's one thing to have an incident, but the other thing is then what will you do, or what did you do to prevent it not to be happening again in the future? So that is what this exercise is about. It's about seeing how you deal with incidents. And the thing is that basically what customs authorities want to do with an AEO certification is that they want to shift responsibilities away from their own towards the economic operators. So they must be sure that you will handle incidents appropriate.
Okay, so it's all about limit risks as much as possible, actually, and not prevent them to happen every time. It's just that you can manage those risks. And is this also regarding the customs activities?
Yes, absolutely. A word that's always coming back is compliancy. And to be compliant means that you act according to some rules, or to all the rules, basically. And investing in compliancy, you see that a lot of companies don't always do that, but investing in compliancy will probably result in a better administration and perhaps less fines or less corrections, which can be quite time consuming for people to solve. I can give you an example. Let's say that there's a problem with your classification. So in the past, maybe 10 years ago, somebody was classifying goods. That person already left the company. Maybe that person was never trained to do so. So there can be a mistake. And let's say that suddenly a customs officer is controlling your shipment thoroughly, and they rule that you used a wrong HS code. That is possible. So then you will have to regularize that the import declaration of that shipment. But they also can say, yeah, but you're already shipping this for a long time. Let's go back in time. So this might result in a lot of fees, and that might result in just extra duties, which you cannot charge anymore to your customer because you already sold them a long time ago, those goods. So it's very important. That's an example.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, okay, the importance is clear. Compliancy is a thing that's getting higher and higher on the list of companies. But what does it take specifically in customs matters to be compliant?
Well, you need to describe all your customs activities. You also need to do periodic audits to see if instructions were followed correctly. And of course, the professional competence, as they call it, must be in order. People need to know what they're talking about.
Okay, so internal controls like procedures, control mechanism, audits, those include all topics of the questionnaire actually.
Yeah, we are talking about different things like classification, just mentioned it in our example, but also origin of goods, preferential origin of goods, who is dealing with that, do they know how to determine it correctly. It's about valuation for both customs value as well as other taxable bases. It's about declarations. Are they correctly filed? For instance, by your customs broker, were they filed on time? What about archiving? How do you do this? If customs want to control a shipment of last year, can you easily provide all the documents, certificates, all these kind of things? Yeah.
Okay, and how do you clarify to customs that you are doing this in your organization?
Well, first of all, you need to describe your procedures. Okay. Then you need to do the audit, but this audit also needs to be done according to certain rules. So in beforehand, you will say how often you will do the controls. So the periodicity should be described. You should keep an incident register, and all these things together, they create a kind of a manual towards customs authorities.
Okay, so actually, if you are AEO authorized and you have that handbook, it's also very beneficial to the continuity of the organization, because if someone gets sick or people leave the organization, then it's always document what they have to do and which steps they have to take. So actually, it doesn't matter which person will perform the activities.
Yes, and actually that's one of the great advantages that we see for the AEO program. Simplifications are fun, lowering of your guarantees is also fun, but just to have everything in place, have everything described, is just very good, and it will just benefit your company as a whole. Indeed, you don't have to invent anything. Also, you don't have to make it. You don't have to invent the guidelines because they are already there. The AO program has all their guidelines already for you. You just have to follow the steps. And importantly, you can always adjust things in the time in the next years, let's say. If some adjustments are needed, you just do it, you inform customs about it, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I guess that will also be with the audits and all those kind of checks and controls that we talked about.
Yeah.
Then at the beginning, we spoke about the different forms of AEO, the AEOC, AEOS, AEOF. Does it mean that the questionnaire is also focused on specific authorizations?
Yes, so that's why the sixth and last chapter is dealing with safety. That goes more about the physical access to premises, to buildings, company. Also, the physical handling and storage of goods is handled there, and also it's also dealing about the security of your trading partners. That's also one of the topics there.
Okay,
so it's indeed separate, more or less.
Okay, so I guess if a company wants to apply for an AEOC status, the AEOS is not applicable.
Yeah.
And for the AEO full, the full is applicable.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, clear. Then if a customs or a company will outsource their customs activities to a customs agent, for example, customs support, do they need a AEO authorization still, or does it make sense for them to apply?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Basically, we want to close all the chain, as discussed before, the green lane. So everybody should take his responsibilities. And it's also important that you know how to control the work that's done by your customs broker. So if you don't have a clear process in place, if you don't have clear instructions, how can you know that they were followed appropriately? So I think it's very important indeed.
Okay, so with all these examples you gave, I can imagine it gives company many reasons to become an AEO. That leads me to one question. Is customs support also authorized economic operator?
Yeah, of course. It's very important for us. Most of our entities are AEO full. Some of them don't, but then we're working very hard to get it accept for those entities as well.
Okay, thank you.
So, thanks, Marloes and Matthias, for this outstanding performance. I hope everything is clear for all of you. If you have questions, please use the chat. Our specialist will answer right away. In the meantime, I will tell you something about what we can do for you regarding the application for an AEO license. As I told you before, Customs Support has specialized itself into the AEO topic. Our specialists have a background within customs authorities, so they know exactly what the authorities want to see if they apply for an AEO license. They also have good contact with custom colleagues, so they are up to date and their knowledge is always close by. By doing the application together with Customs Support, there are two options. The first is that we take care of the entire application. Our consultants will write the self-assessment, and when everything is fulfilled and complete, we will do the application to the EU Trader Portal for you. Another option is that we guide your people to the application. We will support where necessary and review all the described processes. This requires less activity from our people, but will ask a lot from yours. And let's be honest, the entire application is a lot of work. At the end of the application, we can train your people in how to work within the guidelines of AEO. It is of high importance to check your processes every year. This can be done by an audit or assessment. Only by doing this, you can make sure to maintain your AEO license and custom authorities keep seeing you as an authorized economic operator. Like I already said, our consultants are specialists and they have done the application for so many companies before that we developed the perfect approach and action plan for the AEO. Keep in mind that the entire application will take around 6 to 8 months. By saying this, we are at the end of our webinar. I would like to thank you all for joining and especially thank Marloes and Matthias for their input. We will share the slides and a recording with you in the upcoming days. Thanks again and have a great day.